Hello, my lovelies, and welcome back to the Murderous Minds True Crime channel. I'm Poppy, your host. How's everybody doing? I hope you're all having or you've had a wonderful day, and I hope you're just all feeling fabulous. Today, I thought we could unravel a bit more about our favourite matricidal maniac. I thought we'd dig deeper into the infamous hex story. Because there's a few theories that I want to share with you, and I had a look at what two different chat AI apps had to say, so we'll be finding out what they had to say about it too. And I've got some thoughts on Nick and Gypsy's Cinderella date night, and there's a few other thoughts that I want to share with you about a few bits. But I won't bore you with the full list now, so if you do want to know the full topic list, it is going to be included in the description down below. And I do want to just inform you all that this video does come with a trigger warning due to the sensitive content that we'll be discussing. So, if you're all comfortable, we'll get started. So, I'm sure by now we all know Gypsy's repeatedly claimed that she said in internationally televised interviews that her mom, Dee Dee Blanchard, placed a sinister hex on her. She alleged that Dee Dee printed off a picture of Dan and one of Gypsy. She then went to the store, bought a cow's tongue and a jar. Then she put the pictures of Dan and Gypsy inside the jar, along with the cow's tongue and some of Gypsy's menstrual fluid. Then buried the jar and its contents in the garden, telling Gypsy, "You will never find love and you will never be happy." Did you notice though, Gypsy never said that she went with her mum to the store? So again, she was left unattended and she still didn't leave. Yeah, you really had no other choice, did you, little Miss M-word? Everything Dee Dee did just to make Gypsy happy. But then she's going to go and put a hex on her so that she's never going to be happy. Yeah, of course. What an absolute crock. And if ever Dee Dee was to have used like spells and hexes and stuff like that against Gypsy or to control her, wouldn't she have done it years before to protect herself or from buying Gypsy from harm and harming other people and stuff? Like, maybe after the BB gun incident that she didn't know was a BB gun but then did know was a BB gun, or when she got caught in the hotel room with an older man. Maybe after sending those disgusting messages to her own dad and sister. Or any of the other things she'd done. Pick one. If Dee Dee was going to do something like that, she'd have done it way before. I can't see Dee Dee doing it. She wasn't nasty or vindictive. And I really can't see her doing something like that to anybody anyway, no matter who they were or what they'd done. She just doesn't seem like she was that type of person. She had a kind heart, and we know that. I mean, we've heard like how other people have come forward and they said how she put on movie nights with snacks for all the other neighbourhood children. But thinking about it, I wonder if perhaps those movie nights were sort of like Dee Dee's way of socialising or integrating Gypsy with other kids, because she didn't want her to be on her own. She wanted her to have friends, have fun, play, not be lonely and isolated from her peers. But as we've heard from others, Gypsy couldn't and wouldn't play nice. Like the time when she threatened a little girl at Disneyland, while Gypsy was a fully grown adult, mind you, pretending to be a child, and she threatened a little girl at Disneyland saying she was going to push her eyes out the back of her head or something with her thumbs, like she detailed it. Or about the time when they were staying at, I think it was the Ronald McDonald house or somewhere, and she threatened to assault or actually assaulted another little girl there, and that girl's mom actually went and tried to speak to Dee Dee, but Gypsy manipulated her way out of that. And I'm sure there were many other times where she's bullied and threatened other children. These are just the few times that we know about. So no, I don't believe that Gypsy put a hex on Dee Dee. Dee wasn't evil. Gypsy's the one that's got the evil streak, not Dee Dee. In my opinion, Dee Dee, although loving Gypsy unconditionally, was probably afraid of her. She knew her better than anybody else, and she was of no doubt fully aware of what Gypsy was capable of, things that she was getting up to, and how she'd intimidate and bully others. She probably even blamed herself in some way for Gypsy's behavioural issues. As a single mom with a sick child, she spoilt Gypsy with toys, gifts, trips to places most people can only ever dream of, letting her get away with anything and everything, probably trying to compensate for, Rod abandoning them, for all the hospital and doctor's visits, the procedures that she had to go through, only the ones that she needed. There was no other ones. That's been proven. But Dee Dee was probably trying to just compensate for all of this. She just wanted Gypsy to have a full life filled with laughter and happiness. She adored Gypsy. There's photographs of them together and they look so happy. Look at Dee Dee smile in these pictures. All those precious, beautiful memories that Dee Dee made for and with Gypsy, even when she herself was sick and battling cancer, she'd still smile and carry on just to make Gypsy happy, just for her precious daughter. Look how happy and Dee Dee looks in those pictures. Her face seemed to light up. And when she smiled, even her eyes seemed to smile. How devastatingly cruel and sadistically evil. But someone she loved so much and had dedicated her life to caring for was the very one that took that light away. I think she looks like she was a lovely, bubbly lady, and you can see she loved that girl so much. Devoted her life to caring for her and catering to her every want and demand, and boy was that girl demanding. She still is. She knew Gypsy was ill and did everything she could to make her better, while working with doctors all tirelessly and desperately trying to get a diagnosis for a condition that wasn't even yet known about. Each time dreading the doctor's visits as they tested her baby girl for different conditions and illnesses, and she was unable to take it away, to make it stop, make the pain go away and make it all better, just like any other mother would have wanted to do. We see our kids sick and hurt, and we want to make it better. We want to take the hurt away, and we'd take it on ourselves if we could, just so that our babies don't have to suffer. Dee Dee was a mother, terrified that her child, not only her only child actually, but not only would she not have a good quality of life, but she may not even have a very long life. So she did anything and everything that she possibly could to ensure that Gypsy had and did and experienced everything and anything that her heart desired, even if it meant breaking the law, twisting or exaggerating the truth, and risking her own freedom in the process. All she wanted was for that girl to be happy. That's all. And in with that happiness, she wanted her to experience everything life had to offer, including dating and falling in love, just not with dirty, slimy, married older men who had nothing but dishonourable intentions, like Dan the man living in his frying pan. Seriously, his shed ain't much bigger. And I don't believe for 1 minute that she told Gypsy that she'd make her have a termination either if Dan had gotten her pregnant, because that would have gone against all of Dee Dee's moral and religious beliefs. She was a Catholic, newly baptised actually, and Catholicism forbids any type of contraception. They view all forms of contraception as potential terminations, which is a big no-no. So there was no way she was going to make Gypsy do that. No way at all. That was just more rubbish coming from Gypsy's mouth. In fact, the only, I don't know how to say this, the only method of contraception that Catholics will use, I don't even know if it counts as a method of contraception because it's not 100%, but it's the NFP method, aka the rhythm method, also stands for the natural family planning, which basically entails monitoring or observing your natural signs of fertility to avoid fertile periods during your cycle. Yeah. But that's the only one that they will use, so she wouldn't have told her to have a termination or any of that. That was all complete BS. She was just setting the scene. That's all Gypsy was doing by telling us all of that. And I really just, I don't think, no, she wouldn't have made her do that. In fact, Gypsy even tells us as much when, in her latest bog roll book of BS, when she talks about her dad getting that other girl pregnant, really early into Rod and Dee Dee's relationship or marriage, and the other girl turns to Dee Dee for money for a termination, which I think was probably a ploy to make Dee Dee and Rod split up because somebody else wanted Rod, remember? But anyway, Dee Dee refused this girl money for a termination and instead, per Gypsy's own words in her book, gave her formula and nappies and stuff to help her out with this child. The woman that's been sleeping with her husband is standing in front of her, and yet she helps her with things for her baby. Dee Dee she wouldn't have made anybody have a termination. Gypsy admits it herself, so it's just more proof of her lies. So, given how much Dee Dee loved and doted on Gypsy and everything she did for her, why would she ever not want her to find love and happiness? That does not make sense, especially now that we've heard and read and what other friends and neighbours had said about how happy Dee Dee was for Gypsy and Nick when she found out about them seeing each other and how loved up they were. And I reckon she was probably really relieved, because after all the worries that she'd had and with her own deteriorating health, she could now have hope about Gypsy's future. She could see that she had one now, and it seemed to be full of love and maybe even babies. And don't you think Dee Dee would have made a lovely nana? Can just imagine her pockets full of sweeties, and I think she'd have been a lovely nana, nice and cuddly, the best type of nanas. But anyway, I just think it would have been such a beautiful future for Dee Dee as well, and it was cruelly and viciously ripped away and then casually just given away to somebody else, someone who not all that long ago couldn't even give Gypsy the time of day. Well, till it became beneficial to them, that is. And even that seems to be wearing off now, doesn't it? Moving on. But I have a theory about the Cinderella date night and why Dee Dee went. Okay? And I don't think it's because she didn't know that Gypsy would be meeting Nick there for the first time and didn't know about them. I think she knew that Gypsy and Nick were talking to each other and that. And that this was going to be their first date. But, I mean, it was a date that was pre-arranged and pre-planned by Gypsy to appear as a meet-cute situation, that they would pretend not to know each other. What was going to happen was their eyes going to meet over a bucket of popcorn, love at first sight, and a quickie in the men's box. The Prince Charming to her Cinderella, and everybody's meant to believe that. Despite both Gypsy and Nick wearing obviously pre-planned costumes, Nick being a young lad at the cinema on his own to see a Cinderella, a film about a Disney princess, a girly or family type film, and Dee Dee was just going to think they were complete strangers meeting for the first time. We're meant to believe that. I think the only part of that date night that Gypsy's been truthful about is that the three of them went to the cinema that night, and that Gypsy sent Nick money to cover his travel expenses both ways, and his visit to the cinema and everything else he needed, his suit, a lot, and probably accommodation if he stayed over that night as well. But I think Dee Dee was there because she knew about Nick and Gypsy, but also knew that they'd never actually physically met in person and had only met online. I think she knew that they both were vulnerable and had disabilities and were planning a date to meet up together for the first time. And I think like any other good mother, I think she went with them as sort of like a chaperone, just in case anything went wrong, or in case Nick wasn't who he said he was going to be. It happens. So I think that's why she was there, just to be on the safe side, just in case. And I think she did like Nick. And I think Nick probably liked Dee Dee too. He even said that he thought Dee Dee liked him. He was shocked when Gypsy told him otherwise, saying that not only did Dee Dee not like him, but she'd forbade the relationship, felt that he was weird, and said that he was like Jeffrey Dahmer. I don't think for 1 minute that Dee Dee said anything of the sort. That sounds like something that Gypsy would say. I mean, after all, she did liken him to Charles Manson, didn't she? And that really hurt him. It's just one of the many ways she would emotionally abuse and manipulate him. And I think her buying and making him wear a Prince Charming type costume or suit for that date night, I think that was another way of her just pushing the situation, pushing things, just to see how far she could push him, see how much he would do for her, see if he really was willing to do anything she told him. Kind of like, wear this embarrassing, stand out in the crowd, uncomfortable costume that you ain't going to like, and you're going to feel like a right plum in it. Use public transport while wearing said costume, and then come and watch this princess movie with me. She manipulated him, just as she did Dee Dee. But for a plan to work and go ahead, Gypsy needed Nick to believe that he'd messed up somehow. She couldn't have him thinking that Dee Dee liked him and that she was a nice person. She needed him to believe that Dee Dee was abusive towards her, physically and emotionally, that she feared for her life and had no way of escape, nobody to turn to, not even the police or CPS, and that she wasn't even allowed friends. Nobody would believe her anyway. Running away was just not an option. And each time she tried to escape or dared to speak out, Dee Dee would punish her in such cruel and violent ways. Now, she needed Nick to believe that he was her only hope and that he would be saving her life, not only her life, no, but that of their unborn children, manipulating him to believe that she'd been pregnant with his baby and that the abuse and the forced feeding tube had caused her to miscarry. Another heinous, disgusting lie, but a lie that showed Gypsy just how easily and how much she could manipulate and control Nick, and how easily he would believe her, and how much he hung on her every word and trusted her implicitly. Because you see, pregnancy by Nick would not have been possible, because you have to have sex to get pregnant. And during his interrogation, Nick stated that he was never actually able to become fully aroused with or by Gypsy. Not at the house, not at the theatre, not even during their video session things, whatever you want to call them. He would even feel embarrassed and frustrated by it. So that made full penetrative intercourse of a big no-go. So it also proves that he never raped her, which was yet another lie. But he never had actual full-blown intercourse with Gypsy. He never reached climax with Gypsy, and thus he never impregnated Gypsy. But as we know, Gypsy's version of the truth is somewhat different from the actual truth, and she even said, my mum taught me how to be a good liar, a very good liar without conscience. But you see, Gypsy did have intercourse with somebody at the house that night. She had intercourse with somebody in Dee Dee's room and her own, and it is clearly evidenced in the crime scene photos. So it proves that there was at least one other man in that house before Nick's arrival, or up till Nick's arrival. A man who would need to keep silent about everything. That's a lot of trust to put into someone with such a huge secret to keep. And what they were getting up to that night, ending Dee Dee's life. So how could anybody really trust somebody else with that kind of secret to keep quiet? How could you ever be 100% sure that they're never going to tell anybody? Surely you'd need something a little more than just his word on it. But what could possibly give Gypsy 100% trust and confidence in Dan's word? Pinky promise, maybe? No, that wouldn't be enough, would it? How about if he swore on his life, cross my heart, hope to die? No, she'd need to go big on this one. A hex probably do it. So it got to me thinking, and I don't really have much knowledge about hexes and spells and stuff, but this whole cow's tongue does not scream isolation and no finding love. It screams shut your freaking mouth and hold your tongue. So that's where I sort of started going with it. So I thought, well, I asked ChatGPT, I asked DuckDuckGo's version and the Gemini version, and what they had to say was quite interesting. And the more information I gave them, the more it doesn't look good for Gypsy in their responses, put it that way. So I asked for information about the spell, its ingredients, what each ingredient meant, and different things. But at first I just asked about the spell itself, and I didn't give any background or context information about Gypsy. So before we talk about what Gemini said, I just want to let you know what my thoughts about the spell, and then we'll go on to that. So I felt that it wasn't Dee Dee that put a hex on Gypsy, but that it was Gypsy hexing Dan to silence him, and that she accused Dee Dee of doing it in case it was ever dug up. That's why she mentioned it, because she didn't know if it was going to get dug up through any crime scene investigations, even in the future, or maybe by the next person that happens to move into the house. So it was sort of a backstory just to cover her ass, while at the same time further defaming and demonising Dee Dee, and also strengthening Gypsy's victim narrative, adding mental and emotional cruelty into the mix. I think it's also very possible that she came up with the story about Dee Dee putting a hex on her, saying that it was so that she'd never find love, as a way of talking or bragging about the hex, like how, like without incriminating herself, sort of like how, I don't know, like how a murderer will go return to the scene of the crime. And she thought she was going to, didn't she? Remember in her interview, she thought she was going to go and see a movie and then go home. She even left some money back at the house just in case, because she was going to go back. She didn't think she was getting arrested. They just took her to see if she was okay, I think she thought. Or, like how psychopaths like to talk about their crimes. Gypsy also likes to talk, and more often than not, I've found that if she accuses somebody else of something, of doing something to or across her or someone else, I think we need to flip it, because I think every accusation she's made against somebody else has been that it's been her that's done those things to them. That's what I think it is. So, it could be that she was doing those things, like the allegations she made to her grandfather, remember? Do you remember his answer? It wasn't him, it was her, and he had to stop her and say, no, baby, you don't do that. But she tried to twist it into, So then recording the items or the ingredients that are used in the spell, in the hex, sorry. So we've got the cow's tongue, which made me think of the phrase, hold your tongue, meaning to be silent. And I couldn't think of anything else that would symbolise the use of a cow's tongue. The menstrual fluid makes me think it's a way of personalising it, or, like marking your territory sort of thing, claiming ownership as the spellcaster, sort of like a dog or a cat scent marking their territory. The photos of Dan and Gypsy makes me think, well, that's the two people that are encompassed in that secret. And so it would be Gypsy making the hex, or casting the hex on Dan, who needs to hold his tongue and stay silent. And then that's all encased then inside the jar. Yeah? That's my thoughts anyway. I could be wrong. So I asked Gemini ChatGPT, and I said, when talking about hexes and spells, etc., what would the following ingredients do? What kind of spells or ritual, etc.? Any info will be great. The ingredients were, and then I listed them. Gemini replied, photos of the girl and her boyfriend. Sorry, it's in smaller print, so I'm having to squint and get a bit closer to my screen. Photos in many folk magic traditions are seen as a direct representation of the person. They act as a focal point, a way to connect with or influence the individual depicted. Using photos of both individuals suggests the spell is intended to affect their relationship. The cow's tongue has a long history in spells and rituals, often associated with controlling speech, preventing someone from speaking ill of the caster or the target. It can symbolize silencing, binding words, or even confuse communication. The girl's menstrual blood is a potent biological substance that carries strong symbolic weight in various cultures and magical practices. It's often linked to feminine power, fertility, creation, and also in some contexts to binding, control, or even cursing. Its use in spells is usually considered very intense and personal. And then for it to all be placed inside a mason jar and buried creates a contained environment for the magic to work. It can be seen as trapping or focusing the energy. Burying the jar in the earth is a way of grounding the spell, connecting it to the earth's energies, and perhaps keeping it hidden or allowing it to take root and grow over time. Considering these elements together, this collection of ingredients strongly suggests a spell intended to negatively affect the relationship between the girl and her boyfriend, likely with the aim of silencing or controlling the girl in some way. The use of menstrual blood points to a deeply personal and potentially forceful intention, possibly involving domination or separation. The cow's tongue further reinforces the idea of controlling speech or preventing speaking out or acting against the spellcaster's wishes. It's important to remember that interpretations can vary greatly depending on cultural context and individual practices. However, based on traditional symbolism, this particular combination points towards a coercive and potentially harmful work aimed at disrupting a relationship and exerting control. Given that this is part of a case you are researching, this information might offer some insight into the potential motivations or beliefs of whoever created this assemblage. Please be careful and rely on your judgment in handling such sensitive and potentially disturbing findings. I then put, also, the girl has always been obsessed with having a baby girl called Aurora. She gave birth last December to a baby girl called Aurora. It has been almost 10 years since the crime took place. When I wrote this, it had been, but I've been adding and altering and whatnot. And I get a bit anxious before putting things out, so I think they call it procrastinating for a bit. I'm sorry. But anyway, the crime scene photos showed a blanket strewn across the body with a picture of the Disney princess Aurora. She also groomed and coerced a man with disabilities to commit the crime for or with her, and he's currently serving a life sentence while she only served 8.5. Gemini then replied that detail about the name Aurora and the Disney princess blanket adds another layer of unsettling complexity to this case. It suggests a long-held fixation and fantasy that might have played a significant role in the girl's motivations and actions. Let's consider how this new information fits into the existing picture. The name Aurora, her lifelong obsession with this name, and her eventual naming of her own daughter Aurora points to a powerful and enduring personal narrative. In Sleeping Beauty, Aurora is a princess who is cursed and falls into a deep sleep, only to be awakened by true love. This narrative of victimhood, fate, and eventual romantic fulfillment might have deeply resonated with the girl, especially given her claims of her mother preventing her true love. It's possible she saw herself in this narrative, perhaps casting her mother as the malevolent figure preventing her happiness. It then goes on to say, the Disney princess Aurora blanket at the crime scene. The presence of this blanket draped over the victim's body is particularly disturbing. It could be interpreted in several ways. 1. A deliberate symbol. It might have been placed there by the girl as a twisted and symbolic act. Perhaps it was her way to frame her mom as the obstacle to her awakening and happily ever after with her boyfriend. It could be a chillingly theatrical element, reinforcing herself portrayed as the wronged princess. It could be a personal item, so alternatively it could have simply been a blanket that belonged to the girl or was present in the house. However, its placement over the body seems intentional rather than accidental, given the context of the other ritualistic items. A taunt or message. It might even have been a subconscious or conscious message, perhaps directed at the disabled man, subtly reinforcing a narrative of a damsel in distress needing rescue. Considering the timeline, the crime happened nearly 11 years ago, and the birth of her daughter Aurora last December suggests that this obsession has been a constant throughout this period. It makes you wonder if the desire for this specific future with her true love and their daughter Aurora was a driving force behind the extreme actions that she allegedly took. If the inclusion of the Aurora imagery adds a fairy tale-like yet deeply sinister dimension to the scene, it reinforces the idea of a carefully constructed narrative in the girl's mind, where she might have seen herself as the protagonist in a story that required the removal of her obstacle, her mother, to achieve her desired happily ever after. This is a significant detail that further strengthens your theory about the girl's central role in orchestrating these events. It paints a picture of someone living with a long-held fantasy, willing to take extreme measures to make it a reality. Keep this thread of information in mind as you continue your investigation. It could be a key to fully understanding her motivations. I'm thinking, because it's been over half an hour now and I really don't want to bore you all, that I'm going to stop there and I will start again in a couple of days' time, hopefully. But in the next video I will do the second half. So in the next video we'll find out what DuckDuckGo had to say, and there's a few other bits that I want to talk to you about as well still. We'll be talking about Mr. David Blanchard, where I think he fits in. So please look out for the next video to this. I'm going to have to leave it there though, because yeah, it's been nearly 35 minutes now. I don't think I've done one this long before. So I'll see you all soon, and thank you for listening and watching. And if you stayed with me this far, flipping heck, well done. I love you all, and I appreciate all of you. Please be kind to each other and to everyone around you. And I'll see you all soon. Until next time, I love you all. Bye.